Please welcome President and General Manager of Life Science at Datavant, Arnab Chatterjee, along with Tanmay Jain, VP Strategic Solutions at Indegene, for a fireside chat on what it takes to power real-time decisions in pharma commercial. Please welcome them.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Maybe we'll start with quick introductions. My name is Tanmay Jain. I am a Vice President at Indegene. Been at the company for about a year. Past life was at McKinsey and Medidata. So worked a bunch on the analytics side and the data side, which we're going to talk to you about today.
Thanks, everyone. Arnab Chatterjee. I lead our life sciences business within Datavant. Also share previous lives at McKinsey and Medidata and a few other places, but really excited to be here to have this conversation.
Absolutely. So I think what we're going to talk to you about today is how to make better decisions, but more importantly, how to make them quickly in real time. Because we live in a resource-constrained world. As we know, our budgets are constrained. The time we have to engage in HCP is constrained. The engagement patient is constrained. There's competition. So any tactic you have, a tactic you use with HCPs or patients, there are 10 other brands competing for the same patient population, right? And in that world, thankfully, we have data, right? Data and AI to the rescue. Data, we have data, novel data sets that did not exist before, claims, genomics, lab data, or many other kinds of data. From the HCP side, we have data on their preferences, what time of the day HCP likes to read an email, what should be the title of the email that you send to an HCP, what should the type of content they want to engage in, what type of messages they like, what colors they like, and so much more data we have, right? And now we have AI too. We have these novel techniques, not just the legacy analytics, AI, ML, but now generative AI, agentic AI, to make the most of this data. However, we're still stuck in a data interoperability challenge, right? Despite having access to so much data and so many novel AI techniques, we still have challenges of data sitting in silos, data not being connected across different data sets. The patient data from the clinical side is not really connected to the data on the clinical side, or commercial side, or the medical side. So despite having all this data, we're still not able to make the most of it, right? I think words or wisdom from 50 years ago, garbage in, garbage out, holds true even today. If you don't have good data, no amount of models, no amount of AI can help you, right? And I think to really solve this challenge of data interoperability, several partners need to come together. There's Pharma needs to come together with data and technology providers like Datavant, with service providers and analytics providers like Indegene to really come together. And I think we've been doing some work already on this side, on the patient recruitment side. We're working together very closely. So Indegene historically used to do digital engagement of patients, so really target patients in an omnichannel manner around sites to then divert them to clinical trial sites when they get recruited. Now, what we've done with Datavant is really ease the process of screening those patients. So when you really identify those patients and they get referred to a nurse navigator, you then can, with patients' consent, of course, look at their all historic data, claims, EMR data set, during the screening process. So then you know if it's a relevant and eligible patient for a clinical trial. So you don't then burden the sites with all these patients who may not be eligible, right? I think we're just scratching the surface there, right? And I know there's so many other use cases we started to work with on patient identification, especially for rare diseases, matching the patients with the HCPs, the impact of adherence programs, PSPs, et cetera. I think there's so much more to be done. So with all that happening, Arnab, maybe the first question to you is, and the work you do with multiple pharma companies, where and what are the highest value use cases with this new world of interconnected data, and where do you see pharma extracting the maximum value?
Yeah, appreciate the tee up and a highly complicated question, but actually one that every single panel preceding us has discussed today, which is the importance of what a idealized data foundation looks like. So maybe just a 30-second primer on what Datavant is today. We are the largest medical record retrieval company in the United States. That's one thing that we do, and we have businesses in the payer side, the provider side, life sciences, and in the legal and insurance business where we have tens of thousands of people sitting in physical seats in hospital systems and digital APIs pulling in records, fulfilling Medicare risk adjustment, clinical coding, prior authorization. That's one side of the business. On the other side, we actually are building the largest tokenization ecosystem. And tokenization, for the uninitiated, is a fancy word of saying we can encrypt and de-identify data sets, and we can build a massive way of connecting those data sets together, whether it's across claims or EMRs or labs or multimodal omics, kind of the wild west of what data liquidity looks like today. And I think, from our vantage point, we have this really unique view into how every single data company today, whether they're a true data originator, meaning they are the source of hospital data or the source of administrative claims or labs, how they are utilizing their data, or how it all comes together to power some of the use cases that you just described. And from the problems that we're trying to solve, I think if I were to sit in all of your shoes today and the way we think about life sciences, with great data liquidity comes a ton of chaos, right? And I think what we're trying to figure out is, can we really, alleviate the burden of data discovery, data assessment, the linkage of those complicated data sets, the cleanup and the master data management that then feeds into the wonder and potential that is AI, right? So for us, I think some of the use cases we'll talk about today are if you were to build, that kind of structure for pharma commercial. I'll talk a little bit about how we, do it right now, and this idea of pulling together messy data sets, creating a way of, tying it all together under single unique tokens. How those tokens then get repurposed, what are the KPIs, since that's come up a lot, is how do you justify the value of this, and what is the utility of a use case, and what is the downstream impact of that use case, into, does it show an actual needle moving from the time of the initiation of a campaign or the launch of a patient access program into something else that then materializes into true benefit. So I'll pause just for a sec, but that's really the tee up for this slide here. So.
Absolutely. And how do you see the adoption of this? Is it only the leaders adopting this, or do you see a lot of several top pharma adopting these novel data sets and novel techniques?
Yeah, I think the short answer is most pharma companies have a ton of in-house first-party data, and that could be your own specialty pharmacy data. It could be what you're gathering on patient assessments, surveys, questionnaires. It's e-benefit vouchers. It is all of that first-party data, which is complicated and needs to be linked together. And then there is a large bolus of third-party data sets or things that you might license, and that could be claims, pharmacy, prescription. It could be lab data sets, EMR data sets, and that also needs to be linked and pulled together. So I think I got some stat from a large cloud provider. And they said that, on average, pharma is spending, somewhere between $70 to $120 million just on data, right? And the acquisition of that data. And, the question is, how do you then bring in something like what we aim to do, which is tokenization, linkage, privacy, to bring that data and masterfully make it usable, right? And that's no easy task. It's very tech heavy. It's also tokens that are really unique in de-identifying all of the different variables that go into name, date of birth, social security, masking that while still making the data usable is how you can start to get to this. So if I can just shed light on this for 2 minutes, the use case here that we're focusing on, very large cardiometabolic player, they laid out, the 4 things they wanted to solve for with bringing this data together, from the first party that they have, which was very complicated home care visits and some of the pharmacy data, their own pharmacy, with the third-party data sets, which is Experian and LAD and claims data and kind of a big set of commercial data sets. And we built kind of the underlying data layer and the management of the different data sets, and then we started powering different use cases. So the quality of that data, kind of accomplished a few different things. One is we deduped a ton of overlapping records that they had already, and that's like a lot of data time saved. And then the second thing is, we were able to show that the quality of those data overlaps between the first and the third party could then be used as the basis for better omnichannel engagement, for better script performance and understanding them against a competitor. So these are all feeding now into adherence programs and patient access programs. So that's sort of what value ends up looking like. This is a multi-year journey. This is year 2 for us, but out of a 3 to 5 year journey. And I think this is like one of the big unlocks that we're trying to figure out is like, can that data then be usable in an analytics-ready way?
Is it applicable only for, I'm going to call it mass market indications like cardiometabolic, or do you think even for rare indications or even precision oncology, is it relevant, or some of these use cases could be applied?
Yeah, I think small data sets are where it's at too, right? Like we've always talked about, very large, diseases with, patients that are highly generalized, but, the ability to, kind of explore a breadth of different ecosystem companies. We work with 350 different data partners, and I'm constantly amazed at how many times we find this isolated data set in the middle of our platform that we didn't even know existed, right? Like highly specialized population. So to bring that to life, I think, is really cool, and we do a ton of rare disease work too, in the spirit of just like, not betting on any single data player or having a horse in that race, but really trying to just declutter and uncomplicate the mess that is the data world today.
Yeah. And maybe looking under the hood, what's different now? What is enabling these connected data sets to exist? Because real-world data has been around for a while, right? We've been generating data, curating them for a while. But what's different now? So could you talk a bit about that? What's different in terms of technology and how we're able to put this data together?
Yeah, I think the biggest things that I think matter now, I think on average, most life science companies spend 6 to 9 months making data procurement and buying decisions, right? And I think that is a huge waste of time, frankly. The ability to really interrogate fit-for-purpose data sets, understand what you're solving for, and like what is the real targeted question. Like if you're really trying to predict patients jumping from second line to third line therapy and why, you need a better answer and you need a better querying system, and you don't need to talk to 30 different companies to get that answer because they're all going to tell you we can solve it, right? So what is a truly analytically driven way of like putting that data into a system and then saying, are these the right data companies to talk to, assess, and then making a better decision? I think that's one thing to solve for. I think the other thing that's changed is if you can shorten that procurement time, the discovery time, the assessment time, cleanup and curation and harmonization is a mess, right? And I do think that's going to become LLM enabled. It's over time. It's really complicated. Like oncology is not built the same way as cardiometabolic, for example. But we will get to a place where the models and the data management become more turnkey, right? And that's another area we're really focused on. And then I think the last thing is like if we're really trying to show proof points, why data spend can turn into ROI realized, we have to shorten the life cycle of how fast we get there. Otherwise, like we're hitting fever pitch amounts. Like everyone, 2 panels ago, they talked about the fact that we are hitting challenges in spend, right? And we're seeing it across the board in our industry. So can you actually shorten that time to insight and get there to an answer that is satisfactory to saying, yes, we saw script uplift, we saw patients engaged, we were activating a new program, and this is the window we did it in.
The other question on my mind is, I think given the research constrained world we are in right now, and pharma has been burnt by real-world data companies before, right? And I think I speak for all in the room. There was a time when you bought large syndicated data sets, right, worth millions of dollars. And then when you bought them, you realized you couldn't do much with them. Right? So how are you solving that challenge, and how are you really coming across this, the budget constraint that we have, and curating more fit-for-purpose data sets?
Yeah, I mean, we work with so many of these large data originators, data ecosystem partners. I think coming back to ROI is usually the biggest central question now as budgets are being challenged, right? So if we know drug timelines are not getting better, or we know that enrollment timelines aren't getting better, and we know commercialization isn't speeding up, then what core problem are we solving for? And why does data spend hit a certain amount? So I think we have to get to the value stories much quicker. I think we have to get to a place where we're I do see behavior changes in, less of an enterprise multi-year data set purchase and more of a show me that this is answering a specific question at this point in time type of purchase, right? And I think that might be the model moving forward, right? And it might be a shift in our industry, but I think that's probably warranted in some ways. And then in parallel, we want to continue to support every single data player out there to get their data quality higher, to get more shots in goal, to be rigorously assessed to answer that question, right? Because I think there is very high quality information out there. The question is like, how quickly can you find it, and is it the right source to answer that question?
The other topic which I'm quite passionate about, and you've been driving this for many years, even in our past life at Medidata together, is tokenization of patients from clinical trial to the commercial. So could you talk a bit about that? Why that's important, and what? And I know now we're in a different place than when you started working on that like 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So how has the adoption of that been in the industry? And what value is that tokenization across clinical and commercial driving?
Yeah, this is like a passion topic for me, one that'll probably persist for most of my life. But this idea of longitudinal evidence generation and utilizing data that you can have on a patient with their consent in the trial itself all the way through post-trial, right? And the origins of this really are, we want to better understand long-term safety, long-term efficacy of the product, but you can actually now build a really robust understanding of the patient much longer after the trial, right? So, we've been doing this now for about 400 different clinical trials. There are companies that are actually tokenizing their entire trial and have changed their protocol forms and made it mandatory to actually enroll patients and have them tokenized at the point of consent in the trial. So I would love to see that industry shift change with our clinical operations colleagues and with our clinical development counterparts. But the key question to answer here is, great, you have a patient who's consented, they have agreed to link their data set, and then you want to follow that patient into perpetuity. Why make that investment now? And the question ends up being, like, now that we've done many of these trials, we've seen kind of what the linked data sets look like. They're being used for a wide variety of different things. Could they be used to expand a label? Can it be used to support or augment a post-authorization safety study? Or can it be used to better understand patient journeys and better understanding of the product or the medicine itself after the launch of the drug? So for me, like, clinical and commercial, especially in large pharma, do not talk, right? And it's very rare to see a centralized decision-making process here that says we're going to, combine forces and invest in linked data because we think it's going to be relevant for the 10-year life cycle of this product or the 5-year life cycle of this product. But I do think that is something that's necessary. And then for our commercial colleagues in the audience here, that's a really powerful data set. Like, we're seeing overlap rates as high as 90% on claims and 70, 80% on EMRs. You can leverage that data as a powerful asset to power everything else afterwards, brand activation, campaign launches, omnichannel engagement. And I think that is the bigger hill to climb here is, enable the linkage of that data, which is patient consented, to everything else that's out there over time.
So the call to action to our commercial colleagues is give a call to your R&D counterpart and ask them to tokenize?
I think the call to action is like really assess the hurdles and really understand how other companies have done it and start to kind of make an industry shift in sort of a way that we do data collection, right? Like, we're trying to reduce friction and we're trying to get rid of like the disparate nature of how data is used within a single company. This is one way to attack it, I think, right? And like, we can kind of unite on a strategy that says we want to follow these patients, we want to understand long-term outcomes. If you're in a cardiometabolic space again, then you want to link the data, truly understand if there is applications of that data to expand that label. And cardiometabolic is going to be a whole world of wonder for the next 10 years where all of those drugs potentially could be expanded to retinal disease or other therapeutic areas. Having a defensibility of that data to understand what it could be used for, I think it makes a ton of sense. So.
Okay. I know we have 2 minutes left, so I'll probably open the floor for any questions. Maybe we can take one question.
Like highly loaded topics, there's got to be somebody out there.
Probably one question from my side. And back to tokenization, right? Our commercial, and we spoke about a few commercial use cases, right? And are we there yet? Because we started tokenization only, what, 7 years ago, right? But has the data matured enough for the commercial teams to then start driving value? Or are we still, there's still a couple of years before we actually, the commercial teams start gaining value from the data set, and then there's going to be a movement in the industry to expedite that and do more of it?
I think it's a new normal now. Like there's 30 different companies we're working with just on the commercial side who are linking first third-party data sets together, right? And that becomes an underlying data layer. It feeds into CRM. Our token is also used by the ad tech companies like the Swoops and the Live Ramps to build audience models and segments. So it is an end-to-end data process. I think we're working on like just getting data pulled together as like the beginning to feed into all analytics and patient engagement thereafter. So I do think this is kind of already well where the world is headed. So.
All right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, sure. So the question was, can you speak more about the bridge between the ramp ID and what was the other one? Sorry. Oh yeah. So a number of different companies that are focused on audience modeling or segmentation of patients are also working with us on the Datavant token. We work with the Deep Intents, with the Live Ramps and others, and they have built bridges. Swoop is another example. They're really close partner of ours, but they have linked their ability to create tokenized data sets on the Datavant token that then feed into how they do their audience models, that then feed into a ramp ID, and it's bridged accordingly. So there's this neutrality that we play in, which is kind of feeding the entirety of the MarTech or the ad tech ecosystem. I think almost every major advertising technology company is working with us at this point. We've worked with Viva and others for some time. So the key here for us is to enable our token to be able to create tokenized data sets that then are leveraged by those companies downstream. So, and we can talk about workflows, we can talk about working with how that feeds into Trade Desk and other organizations that then go downstream, but we're like parts 1 and 2 of that 5-step workflow right now.
All right. Any last question?
AI summaries are crazy. I hope I said everything right.
Great.
Cool.
All right. Thank you so much, Arnab.
Thank you, guys.